Well, it's Friday, December 19th, 2025. We got a few days to go before the Christmas holidays, and this is sort of wrapping up the year, I guess, right now, because there's not a lot going on in the auction market. The antique market, as we all know, gets, I say every year, it gets very quiet. Right between Thanksgiving and the New Year actually, and then the sales all come back in January, February, and we'll start to see the listings. Right now, there's a few sales that are finishing up. Some sales got completed this week, but there wasn't much. There really wasn't much. There are a number of things coming up after the New Year, and we'll be paying attention to them. The January 1st sales are coming in already, and there's a number of good lots already, and they're all on the global pages. We've talked about them in the past, but one of the things I thought it would be kind of interesting to do. I'll go through a few results from this past week, but I want to take a look sort of back at the year. And I thought it would be fun to take a look at things because I often get emails from people saying, well, it's so expensive to collect Chinese things. You can't find things, under $1,000. I often hear, for 500 or 300 or 200, something that, a regular person that's interested in the art can collect and get very good quality things. So I've put together a bunch of things at the end here the video, just so going through some of the things that are available on the market. And it's not all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but just some of the things where you can buy really quite wonderful things without, having to make the front page of the New York Times for spending a lot of money. And I was kind of surprised. I went back through my watch list for the last year, just on the things I bookmarked, because I don't often bookmark everything in an auction. I'll bookmark a couple of things to remind me that they're there and then pull them all up to take a look and see what's going on. But just the things that I just bookmarked, I'll go back to them. And a couple of the things, one of the things is something I actually bought myself, and I got a great buy on it. And I'll get into that and tell you why I bought it and so forth. So let's just take a look. This is a few things that are coming up that you might want to pay attention to. One of them is this, and I talked about this sale the other day. It's John McGinnis here in Massachusetts, and I've known John for 30 years, and Danny, who works with him, and I knew them all when I ran auctions. He's up in Amesbury. He's got a sale coming up on January 2nd, and he's got this carved panel in it. This is a very big panel. It's about 5 feet long, and they've misidentified it for the time being as being Chinese. It's a Japanese carving. It's a Japanese wall architectural panel. It's beautifully done. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's got some wear, obviously, due to age, but it's a very attractive piece of carving. It's estimated at $2,000 to $4,000, and I don't think even for a Japanese piece this big, that's unreasonable. And the starting price is $1,000. The sale's on January 2nd. But if you're into carvings and you live nearby, this is a heavy thing. Keep in mind, this piece is probably very heavy, and it's large, obviously. It's 5 feet long and 3 feet wide. So shipping it might be a bit of an issue because it will be expensive to ship. If you ship this in the United States, it's going to cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars to ship. But if you live in New England, go pick the thing up. Get yourself a great piece of Japanese art. All right, and then over to this. This is something that's coming up on the 14th of January. It's an extremely nice China trade punch bowl. It's about 13 inches, 13 and a quarter inches in diameter. This is being sold by Hill Auction Gallery in Sunrise, Florida on January 14th. But this is a really nice example. This has the chevron pattern, fill areas, and then these very finely done mandarin scenes. These are wonderfully done. This is a good looking bowl. And I looked at it pretty carefully. I couldn't see anything wrong with it. It's got the glaze looks good on the inside. Obviously, it's got nice shiny aspects to it. I don't see any signs of wear. The gilding looks to be in very good condition. All the way around, it looks fine to me. I don't see any drawbacks to it. That might be a hairline in the bottom, a faint one, but that's about it. It's still a very attractive bowl. The starting price is $50 on it. They've given it a $100 to a $1,000 estimate. So I expect the reserve, if there's a reserve at all, it's probably $50. But it might be a chance for you to buy if you wanted one of these bowls, and that sort of will feed into what we're talking about later. It might be one of these things that go reasonably. Just leave bids, and I've said it. I heard from somebody this week. It was kind of fun. He called up about something, and we were talking about the strategy of just leaving bids on things. And during the conversation, he said, he says, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about that. And he says, I realize how many good things I have gotten surprisingly by using that strategy. And this was a very common thing back in the day, by the way, when most auctions were live and you had an audience and a room full of people and it was a lot of fun and all that. We would have dealers come through and they'd leave pages of bids, pages and pages of bids. We'd have dealers come in from around the Northeast and New York, and they'd leave 5 or 10 pages of bids in an auction. We had a 500 lot auction. They'd leave bids on 250 or 300 of them. And they would just say, if I get it, I get it. Great. If I don't, fine. It's inventory. So if you're a dealer and you're serious about making money in this business, that's one of the things you should be doing. Don't shoot for the moon on everything and then think you can double your money. Look for things that might slip through the cracks. Look at the number of watches on a lot and just leave a decent bid on it, a bid you'd be very happy to pay, taking into account, of course, buyer's premiums and shipping and all that business. But it's the way to do it. It's the way to build up a good inventory, and it's the way to spread out your risk, and especially when it comes to lots. If you see a lot online and there's 10 or 20 pieces in it, go through, take the time. Most people don't take the time. Take the time to go through it, try to figure out which ones are in perfect conditions, which ones aren't. The ones that aren't, take off 80, 90% of the value for that, and then figure out what the rest are worth, and then calculate what the total lot value broken up might be worth to you, and then leave a bid accordingly. And you can do very well doing that. I've known a lot of people that have. All right, and then hopping along over to this is also, I think this is also at Hill Auctions, is a set of these rose mandarin dishes, 8-piece set, estimated at, again, $100 to $1,000. But these kinds of plates are very desirable among collectors. These are nice. They have white rims, nice-looking mandarin decoration. They're the backs. I don't see any obvious signs of damage. These look like they were probably done around 1840 to 1850. Nice examples. They're probably about 8 inches in diameter, typically. 8 inches in diameter. But it's a nice set. 8 of them. $100 to $1,000 estimate, and they got a couple of bids already. But do the math on them. Look up and see what these sell for. Often these plates individually sell for $200 or $300 a piece in shops. This particular pattern remains very, very popular with interior decorators. Incidentally, they absolutely go wild for these. We've seen them come up at Stair Gallery. They bring really big prices, several $1,000s for a set. So keep that in mind. And then this that's really all the new stuff that's turned up this week. Not much. There's very little new material up here. Here's my watch list. The things around. These are all things we've talked about in the past. Some of the things I've bookmarked. Oh, this is coming up. I should mention this. It's a big Chinese chocolate pot or coffee pot. This is coming up at Redland's Antique Auctions down in Redland, California. This looks like it's their first auction or their first time on Live Auctioneers. They have this very nice teapot with metal mounts, probably done in Europe. It's an 18th century pot. It measures 11 and a half inches tall, and it's estimated at $1,200 to $1,500, but it's a very good form. You see this type typically only in European collections or in American collections where they brought it back from England or Holland or somewhere over there from a trip. But nice looking pot. So keep that in mind. But other than that, I don't see a heck of a lot of other things have turned up in the last week. These are just some of the things that I've bookmarked for one reason or another. Not all of them are Chinese, by the way. If you're confused, you look at a few of the things. It's just things that I'm personally interested in. So at any rate. But hopping over to some of the things that sold last week, this Ningxia rug that was at Bonham's that we talked about a few weeks ago, I thought it was wonderful. It was a room-size rug, measured roughly 97 by, well, it measured, what's it come out to? About 8.5 feet by about 11 feet. It was a big Chinese rug. And the pattern, though, was a little bit confusing because this pattern is typically only seen on fairly small rugs. And this was a late 19th century, second half of the 19th century carpet. But it's more often seen on very small mats. And this was a big one. And you recognize all the patterns, of course. The colors were lovely on this. This was a great rug. Somebody got a wonder. I don't think, and it's funny, and it went for over the estimate. It went for $3,500 with the premium, roughly. And I don't think that was a big price for this. This was a heck of a nice rug. The estimate was extremely low, $1,000 to $1,500, and it ended up going for more than double its high estimate. But it's a very lovely example and in beautiful condition, because Chinese rugs, as you know, if they're in high traffic areas in Western homes, the pile wears down on them very quickly because the wool is extremely soft and prone to wear. So if you can find a 19th century Chinese rug in good condition with pile, you really discovered something very, very nice. And this rug was, I thought, just terrific. And then hopping along over to this screen sold. I had an inquiry about this screen, and he was wondering what, did I think it would sell for I thought it would go for more, and I said it could bring as much as 20,000 if enough people lock onto it. It's a Nanban type screen, meaning Dutch traders. Here they are, Europeans coming into Japan, done in the 17th century. This is a very, very nice, probably around 1680 or so, very nice screen. I thought it was wonderful, and I thought it was in very good condition for its age. Japanese screens, as you know, and screens in general, but paper screens with paint decoration, they tend to get worn and have damage along these seams for each panel, just from being used and up and one thing and another. But this one looked to be in wonderful shape, and it ended up going for 26 plus the premium, so around 35 or so, $34,000. But a really lovely, lovely screen. And then over to this sold. This was also at Bonham's. Was this a very nice, an unusually colored dragon robe, 19th century, with these very large blue clouds on it. You may notice them here, all through here, and it was on a sort of a very warm rust-colored ground, but the dragons were beautifully drawn on it, and I think this was an outstanding buy. I don't think this was not a heavy price for this robe at all. I think the buyer got a heck of a good buy. There's a little damage on the sleeve on the black area, but nobody really cares about that. The main thing is the robe itself looked to be quite good. All the way around. Here's the back of it. Beautifully done, and fairly large dragons, which is unusual. And with the premium, it ended up at about 70. What's that about? About $8,000 roughly, maybe a little over 8,000, 8,300 or something. I don't think that was an unreasonable price. If this had sold for 12 to 15,000, I wouldn't have been at all surprised. It had very good coloring, and stylistically was excellent. And then over to this. This was that book on bamboo I've mentioned a number of times, just because if you collect bamboo carvings and brush pots and incense stick holders and perfumers and figures and all this sort of thing. This set by Yi and Tam is one of the classics on it. It was estimated at $300 to $500, ended up at about $600 with the premium. That's not a high price for these sets. About 9 years ago, some of these sets were selling for over $1,000, $1,200 even, $1,300. But this was a very, very good book, and it was one of the first big sets done in English that focused on the topic of bamboo carvings. And it's a great book. I use it all the time. I've got it right in the other room. And whoever got it, if one of you are the buyers of this, congratulations! You got a really nice set of books. And I hope people start buying more books. I noticed something strange. The price of books, reference books in Chinese art, have gone down in price over the last 6 or 7 years. And I think a lot of it is that people think they can get all their information off the internet on what they need to know. You can't. You cannot. A lot of the information on the internet is it's made up. It is not accurate because they take prices of objects and things from things that were fakes that sold for a lot of money. We've seen it over and over and over again. We've seen it on live auctioneers, reproductions. Sometimes these crooked auction houses will actually jack up the prices on their own things to make them look like they're selling things for a lot of money, and they're not selling anything. And they can get around it, of course, because if they tell live auctioneers it didn't sell on your platform, it sold by a left bid, it's sold by a phone bid, it's sold on our own platform. They can post the price here, but if Live Auctioneers hasn't recorded as a sale through their server, they don't get the extra bonus for doing the sale. So it's a game going on here, and Live Auctioneers is sort of getting played, I think, is what it amounts to. But at any rate, buy books, build a reference library, commit to it if you're serious about learning this stuff, and it'll make the collecting much more interesting and fun, and you'll make better choices. You'll buy better things. All right. That's all I have to say on that. And I repeat that message once in a while just because it is so critical. And if you've been collecting for any length of time and you don't have a reference, if you've been collecting for 5 or 10 years and you don't have a reference library of at least 150 good books on the topics that you're interested in, you're missing out. You're missing out. Buy good reference books. They're out there. You learn a lot by reading them, and they're usually very well illustrated these days with good color reproductions. And it'll also keep you from buying copies, because I still see a lot of fakes being sold on Live Auctioneers all the time, or things that are just misrepresented. People that say things that are Chinese that are Japanese, or Japanese that are Chinese. That's a fairly common thing. For most auction houses, that's an innocent enough mistake much of the time, but it is a mistake, and you should want to know how to spot them. All right, and then there was this group of 6 paintings of the poets and on poems and poems on wood. I just like this set a lot, and I didn't think the estimate was bad. I thought it might have been a little high, but it was estimated $1,500 to $2,500, and somebody bought the whole set for $650 plus premium. That was a great buy. These are very, very nice Japanese panels, and they leave the wood very rustic, so it makes them quite charming. This was also at Bonham's. And then this was at Bonham's. This is that pear-shaped Yu Chun-Ping that we talked about last week. I thought it looked like an 18th century one to me, judging by the shape and glaze. It looked very likely to be 18th century. I thought it was wonderfully colored, beautifully potted, and in the end, it did very well. It sold for $7,000 plus the premium, or around $9,100 roughly. And the estimate was $3,000 to $5,000. I didn't think the estimate was. I thought the estimate was low. And Bonhams did this on purpose. They give reasonable estimates these days. They're getting very smart with this. It seems they've had a couple of very successful sales over in the UK. They've had very successful sales here in the States lately. And I think they're cautioning their consigners to chill out on the big estimates. Big estimates are kill auctions. They just kill auctions. And modest estimates, no estimates, should be the rule. Should be the rule. If you're selling something, don't bury it. Don't make it unsellable with a high estimate. And this was a wonderful piece, a very, very nice piece. All right, and then there was this. This I thought was also a great buy. This was a Japanese screen that was at Bonham's this past week. It just sold a day or two ago. It was this really wonderful ascending geese, or ascending ducks rather. I like the scene. I like the screens because they have a very nice sort of antique finish on them, just due to age. This is quite an old screen. It looks like they say 18th or 19th century. I think it's probably, stylistically, it looks very 18th century to me. And I love the way the grasses are drawn. Very quickly done with nice spikes, but very, very controlled. Very, very controlled. And then the birds are wonderful, of course, coming in for the big landing. And this was estimated at $1,500 to $2,000. Didn't get there. Went for $750 plus premium, or again about $950 or something like that. Very reasonable. Very, very reasonable. And this wouldn't have been too hard to ship because it wasn't particularly enormous. It was about 4.5 feet tall, nearly, not quite 5 feet tall. And each panel was, how wide were the panels? They weren't terribly wide, as I recall. Well, the whole thing is 58 by 58 open, so closed, cut it in half, and then you could ship that. And that wouldn't be too hard to ship because these are very, very light. There's not a lot of weight involved. This was another great buy also for the week. It was this neoclassical grotto style piano bench. These are Venetian, and I thought it was great, and I thought the estimate was more than reasonable. In the past, we've seen these sell. These are beautifully carved. Typically, they're 18th or early 19th century. You see them in Venice all the time. They're wonderful, and I love the dolphin heads on the bottom, and then the silvered woodwork has like a silver gilt wash over it, and this beautiful ruffled edge seat like a shell, beautifully done. And somebody got this for $300 plus the premium. That was a bargain. That was an absolute bargain. It was a stool. I don't know if they would call it a piano stool, but they called it a piano bench for some reason. 22 inches high, and again, wouldn't be that big a deal to ship. It's not. It's a little bit heavy, but it's not too big. So somebody got a great buy. This was at Michan's out in California. Had this. And then over to this was another. This is just getting a few pieces of furniture in here of some really great buys during the year. There was this. This is now we're going to get into some things that sold during the year. These are all things. Everything going forward here are going to be all things that sold for under $1,000, including the buyer's premium. Just to give you a sense of value. And think about, in some of the cases like this, think about what you'd pay at a retail store, at a fancy designer store for a Recamier like this. This was a 19th century federal period one. They called it Empire. I don't think of these as Empire. But, excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold. Empire Recamier, a settee. But if you were to buy this from a very fine department store or interior design store with this beautifully painted frame and this wonderful, looks like silk damask upholstery on it, and this is a very nice one. It's painted black with a little bit of gilt tracery on it. This would be a $6,000 or $7,000 couch. Somebody picked this up for $700 plus the premium, or a little over $900. Absolutely great buy. And then over to this. I want to mention, I threw this in at the end because I was talking to him this week. This this screen. You maybe remember we talked about the Marco Polo sale a few weeks ago, who had the wonderful Korean bronze that brought 300,000 US. He had a couple of days later, and I did mention it. They had another sale, sort of a general sale with furniture and decorative art and some China trade pieces in it. And in it was this screen. This is Chinese wallpaper. Wonderfully done, and it was 51 feet long, and it was only estimated at $25,000 to $30,000. And I know I brought it up on the Patreon page. I think I brought it up here too. This was extremely rare, and it's 18th century wallpaper is very, very desirable, and you often see it remounted on panels like this. This is a fairly common way of doing it, and sometimes people see one or two of these and they think it's just a two-fold screen that was made that way. No, this is how they traditionally often would mount wallpaper panels on mansions and in estates and so forth. You may recall the PBD Essex Museum video we did a couple of weeks ago. They had a whole room of that wallpaper. Well, here was basically a room of it. This was 51 feet long when you lined up all the sections, and here they have it all perfect. All of them are in order. I hope they numbered it for whoever bought it on the back with a sticker or something, so they could know which order to put it back in on. It would be a nightmare to reassemble in a house. But anyway, this was a wonderful thing, and it was estimated at 25 to 35,000 or 30,000 euros. And I wrote Carlo because I couldn't. I was thinking, what's the deal with that? And he wrote me back, and he said, no, it's sold, but it's something about Live Auctioneer's system didn't accept it, or it came in too late to be I don't know what the deal was, but anyway, it sold for 125,000 euros. Did very, very well, which doesn't surprise me at all. A few months ago, remember, we saw that set of 4 panels down in Florida that sold for $10,000 or $15,000. And this is 51-foot sections lined up, so you could basically panel a whole room in it. It would be amazingly elegant. And it went for 125,000 euros. And that was the selling price, which is this is really great stuff. And you won't see a set like this come up again for probably 20 years, and that's no exaggeration. You hardly ever see more than 2 or 3 sections of these wallpaper together. So somebody got a great thing. I hope somebody in Europe probably bought it, and they drove down sent a truck down or a van to pick it all up, because it's quite a bit of it, and it's got to be handled carefully. All right. The other things that sold this year that I thought were very reasonable, and this was just a few weeks ago, was this very nice turquoise interior China trade butterfly bowl from the 19th century. I thought it was wonderful. I don't see anything wrong with it. A lot of gilding on it, gilding and turquoise, unusual coloration. The size was it 13 and a quarter inches, and it ended up going for about $700. It was only estimated at 4 to 450. Went for 700, or about, including the premium, about 900. Figure it in $910 or something. But it was a wonderful bowl and great color and rather unusual. I thought that was a good buy for the year. And then there was this. I had left a bid on this. I didn't get it. I think I was the underbidder. But anyway, it was estimated at 500 to 1,000. Went for 700. This very nice Buddha. Here we go. Bamboo carving. This is Shu Lo, one of the star gods, it looks like, with kids on them. Here they are. And nice old one, though. This looks like a late 18th or early 19th century example. Beautifully carved. It was about a foot tall. And if you're a bamboo collector, this was a steal. It was only estimated at 500 to 1,000. It ended up going for about 900 with the premium. But we've seen 13 inches tall. This was a big one. We've seen these in the major auction houses over in London, and they can bring 2,500, 3,000. They can bring a lot of money. And somebody got this was a wonderful trade for somebody. I should have probably left more, but I didn't. Anyway, China trade paintings also, some of them do extremely well, but in general, they represent a really, really good value in the market. Here you have this China trade landscape painting, gouache on canvas. It looks like it's an oil on canvas, actually. No, it's a gouache, but very nicely framed, rather elegantly framed, with this sort of salmon-colored and gilt dressing on it. Nicely done, good-looking mat around the inside of it. This was a beautiful picture and a wonderful scene. The thing about Chinese paintings, you can imagine yourself in this scene, standing here on these steps, looking out at this beautiful view, the smell of the tropics, just wonderful, and the fishing boat coming back after a day out with his nets, and lovely. $700 it went for. I think that was a great buy. I think the estimate was accurate. I just think they represent a very, very good buy. This was at Nordblom Auctions in Boston. Here, I know Carl. He got the dating right, about 1840. But a beautiful, beautiful example in pretty good size. It measured 20 by 26 inches, including the frame. So it was a nice size painting, and I think a very good value, under $1,000. Where can you get a great piece of 18th century art, 19th century art for that? And then there was this. This was the two gouaches. These just sold on the 18th, just yesterday. It was the pair of tea cultivation, the two tea cultivation paintings, all framed and ready to hang, gouache on paper, on European paper. And that's because they used to import paper, famously Wattmans. And there were some companies in Europe, in the mainland of Europe and Holland, that would ship over paper to be painted on. But this was a very nice one. I think it deserves a better frame. And I think if you're the buyer of this, get this cardboard the heck off of there and put on some acid-free paper or something. Take it to a good framer and have them do that for you. And I think it would look nicer with a darker frame. And you could actually probably paint this black. Take it out of if you bought it, take it out of the frame, mass tape it, get some black paint, and do it that way. I don't think the frame does it any favors, but it's a very nice painting. And the pair of them, the two of them, sold for about $650 for the pair. And these were also fairly good size. The sheets were 11 by 14, and the overall sizes were what was they? They were 12 and 3/4 by 15 inches was the overall size. So they were perfectly good size, and they were a very, very good buy. And then some of you may remember this one, the pagoda at Guangzhou, that sold a few months ago in September. This was a wonderful buy. $350. And this was at Niue Auctions they're in the Midwest, right? Ohio. Well, that's sort of the Midwest. There it is. This is a very nice painting, and it was originally bought from Martin Gregory, in London, the famous China trade dealer. And I can guarantee you, back in the 80s and the 90s, when he was selling these like hotcakes, he probably sold this painting for $6,000 or $8,000. Somebody picked this up for $350 plus premium. This was maybe the steal of one of the steals of the year. This was an absolutely wonderful picture, and it was all framed, ready to go, nicely framed with a gilt fillet around the inside. The matting was very expensive. The matting and frame on this probably cost about $800 or $900. It was a very, very good frame. Framing can be expensive. Somebody picked up the whole shebang for under $500. Great buy, great buy. And then this was also another great buy for $200, a Chinese export painting of a bird, early 19th century. Very nice detail. This was, I think, at Druitt's, as I recall. Maybe wasn't. No, it was a Hilliard and Company in Madison, Virginia. That's it. Druitt's has these all the time. That's why I thought of Druitt's. So this ended up going for about $260, framed and ready to hang. All right. Great buy. This was also a great buy, and this was one of these Anglo-Indian miniature trade paintings on ivory. They never say it's on ivory, but it is. And this one was spectacularly framed with a gilt and gesso, velvet, red velvet mat around it, but unbelievably fine detail. Unbelievably fine detail. This was one of the finest ones I've seen in a few years. It was well, the one that came from the Wahlberg collection that sold at Aqaba a few weeks ago was as fine as this. That sold for several $1,000s, as I recall. But this was also an extremely fine one, and it went for nothing, $250 plus the premium. And it wasn't a tiny one. It was the overall, including the frame, was 11.5 by 13. 11.5 by 13. This wasn't a little tiny miniature. This was a good size one. Very good buy. That was a great buy. And then over to this. Ivory seems to be, it's funny, ivory is supposed to be illegal to sell. And I'm seeing ivory turning up all the time on live auctioneers now. And initially, it was just over in the EU. Now it's here. Now it's turning up in the United States in auctions, and I think maybe it looks like Fish and Wildlife is lightening up on all that stuff because increasingly we're seeing it. There was a very, very fine cup that appeared up in an auction up in Vermont or New Hampshire a few months ago that did very well, and there's a number of sales where ivory is now turning up. These are China trade boxes, and as some of you may recall, I have a box that looks just like this one. It doesn't have the metal bands on it, and it's a little better condition, but this is still a really good one. And then there's this small box down here, sort of a paper box for papers and documents, and then the sewing table box over here. All of these are excellent. All of these are excellent boxes. They're all first half of the 19th century, and the whole lot sold for just $3.25. $3.25 for that. That was a steal. And the big box is 10 inches long. Give you some idea of size on these. That was a very, very good buy. So with the buyer's premium, you're looking at around $410 or something for all three pieces. And then same thing with this. This was a beautiful. It was it says antique Nichols Hayden New York carved in gilt metal chinoiserie cigarette box. The metalwork is from Nicholas Hayden. All right, so you don't get confused. It's a Chinese export Indian elephant, probably ivory box with this beautiful custom-made metalwork frame around it, and it may be gilt silver or gilt bronze. Beautifully done. There it is. That's the maker. And this was a popular thing, as we know, back in, especially between 1900 and the 1940s. Lots of very fine stores in New York in particular, a couple in Boston. Yamanaka was among them. There were several. And they would remount Chinese objects and use them in more acceptable Western forms. And this was a very, very lovely one. And it went for $275 plus premium. So about, I don't know, what's that work out to? About $350. Beautiful box. The other thing that was a relative bargain was this. Now, this was mislisted as Chinese blue and white, and it went for $50. It's Japanese. It was 8.25 inches in diameter, but it was an 18th century Japanese Arita dish. It was a rather nice one. It's got some tape or something on it, which would wash off, but the birds and the pattern and so forth are very, very nice on it. Here's the back of it. This looks like a Japanese dish to me, and it went for just $50 plus the premium. Absolute steal, made probably around 1680 or 90. Absolute steal. It was estimated 100 to 200, which I thought was reasonable. And this one was at Allers and Ogletree down in Georgia, and they usually get pretty good prices for things. It's one of those things where you just leave a bid, leave a bid. You never know. Even with some of the larger, more well-known auction houses, every once in a while something goes through and you end up with it for whatever reason. You don't know. You don't know what how the stars can align for you. All right, and then over to this. Now, this was a chair, an Anglo-Indian chair that was up at Merrill's in Williston, Vermont, just a couple of months ago. This very fine 1860s Indian carved chair. This is a beautiful chair. And if it was a little bit closer to me, I probably would have bid on it, to be honest. I have one here that's a little more elaborate than this one, but I would love this as a side chair. And it might need some reupholstery by the looks of the edges, the silk damask on it's worn. But this was a beautifully carved chair. And this is in the Peabody Essex Museum put out a very good book a couple of years ago. Well, it's probably 20 years ago now. Seems like yesterday, of Indian furniture. It's excellent from PEM. And if you don't have it and you like Indian furniture, get the book. Get the book. You can get it from their store online, and I suspect book dealers will have it too. But it's a fairly extensive book. It's quite big. It's sort of on the idea and size of the Crossman book on the China trade. It's a big book with lots of illustrations, and they go by region for the Anglo-Indian furniture and the furniture that was produced in India. But this was a very nice one, and it went for nothing. It went for absolutely nothing, given the amount of work in it. $125. All right, and that's all hand carved. All that carving you see on there is hand done. You couldn't reproduce that chair today for $10,000. Absolutely couldn't. Nope. Who's going to do it? 100 and a quarter plus premium. So somebody got a beautiful chair for $150. They're going to cost them $100, $150 to throw a new cushion on it, or just reupholster the old one. Just draw some fabric over it and staple it on. Be done with it. All right, and then this. Now, this was something I bought. This was a very interesting. It was originally listed as Chinese, and I actually told them it's Japanese. I probably shouldn't have, but it didn't make any. I still got it very reasonably. And maybe changing it confused people. This is a really nice 18th century Japanese amari dish. And I read when I saw the center scene, it's very Chinese looking. That's probably why they thought it was Chinese. And it reminded me of a dish I saw, and I went snooping and I found it. This was the one I had seen before, and this is the only one I'd ever seen, but it just struck me because I like Japanese ceramics. This is in the Cleveland Museum of Art. This is a fairly small one. It's only about 8 inches in diameter, and it's identical. It's the same scene. It's made at the same time. But this one is a much larger one. It's 12 inches, and it has 2 pairs of dragons on each end. I'd never seen that before on a piece of Japanese amari done this way. I'd never seen these handles applied like that. A couple of them one of them have been knocked off or something. I got it over there. I didn't buy it to sell it. I bought it to keep it. Here's the back of it with the Chenhua mark on it, typical. And I bought this for $100. And I left, I don't know, 600 or 700 on it. So I ended up getting it for 100 plus premium, or around $130. It was a great buy. I was very pleased with it, for obvious reasons. And there's the one, and this came out of the Milliken collection that was given in the 1960s to the museum, 1964. All right. Other things that were a great buy was this. This went through the Benefit Shop. They're an online charity thing in Mount Kisco, New York, and they get good things there. You want to keep an eye on the Benefit Shop. They had this. They had estimated at $20 to $40, and they just and they identified it, as an antique Chinese export porcelain tureen. I had talked about it a bit when it first went through, because I thought, these turn up once in a while. There was a huge service that turned up in the UK a few months ago that had one of these tureens in it. This one is the tureen with the undertray, with its matching undertray. And this looked absolutely fine to me. I didn't think this was a reproduction or anything. There was no reason for this to go so inexpensively. It's got the nice strap handles on the end. There's the bottom, looks perfectly fine. Late 18th century, but wonderfully gilded, all intact. was only estimated. They estimated at $20 to $40, which is their way of just saying we're just here to sell the stuff. We're not interested in what. They didn't want. They don't like to offer prices very often or estimates unless it's gold or silver, something they can weigh out. At any rate, it went for 300 plus the premium, so about $390 for the platter and the tureen. That was a steal. That was a great buy, a great buy. And then there was this is a wonderful Hongxi Ming Dynasty charger. It measured 13 inches in diameter. And you may remember there was that sale at who was it? They had the sale a few months ago. They have a funny name. Is it not Placus? They're in the Midwest. They handle good things, but at any rate, they had a whole set of all that Ming blue and white that we saw that had been published in a book. This was another example that came up a week and a half later, and this was out west. I think this was at Claire's or at Bichon's, was it? Or Andrew Jones in Los Angeles. I knew it was in California. I couldn't remember who sold it. Here's one that's just like the one that sold in that sale 2 weeks earlier. That went for about, I think it went for about 1,800 plus premium. Here's one that turned up at Andrew Jones, and I had pointed it out because I thought, there's another. If you missed that one, this is an equally good one with the conch shell and all the lattice patterning in the middle here. Absolutely aesthetic. Looked very, very good. Good looking detail up close. Didn't see anything wrong with it. And here's the back of it. Pretty classic Hongxi porcelain back. Didn't see any reason not to go after it. What was that little stain here? Oh, it's just a glaze gap. A little iron oxide showed through. Okay, that's all right. It went for $550 plus premium. So it went for about half of what the ones went for 2 weeks earlier. It was identical. It was identical type of plate. Hongxi, Hongxi example, most likely, possibly Zhende, but probably Hongxi. Again, great buy, great buy. And then over to this. This just sold over at Drew Wheat's. I forget when this was. This was not that long ago. It was this year sometime. It was this beautiful Kangxi Amari dish. Wonderful scene. I think it was a couple of months ago. And with the courtyard scene and the gate here, nicely done, good looking enamels. It appeared to be in very, very good condition. And it measured, wasn't terribly big. It was a little over a foot in diameter, but it was about 12 and a half inches wide. So it technically was a charger. It went for just $134 US plus the premium. So again, a great buy. And if you're in the UK and you missed it, I'm sorry. This was a very good buy. And then the last one we'll talk about is this is very nice. They just called it a Chinese antique low ball. This was actually a piece of blue and white Vietnamese market material probably from the 15th or early 16th century. Wonderfully done. It's got a minor kiln discoloration on the interior, which is very typical of these. They didn't show the back of it, so I don't know whether it had a brown base. Often you'll see these plates, and they put a brown dressing on the bottom to clean them up a little when they finish. They really look rather nice that way, I must say. And Vietnamese porcelain has become very popular. Rob Michaels just had a piece of it sell for I don't know, $14,000 or $15,000. It was a very attractive vase. But there is a growing market out there for Annamese and Vietnamese market Asian art. It's very interesting stuff, and it's beautifully done. If you know Alan Troang, who has the Canablog over in Paris, he's a real wizard with Vietnamese porcelain. He's a wizard with a lot of stuff, but he's very sharp on Vietnamese porcelain. If you ever get a piece that you're curious about, email him. He and his brother are nice people. But anyway, this was a wonderful platter. Loved the way the phoenix is drawn in the middle, and it went very inexpensively. It went for $375 plus the premium, so that brought it in just under $500, somewhere in that area. So anyway, those are sort of some of the buys of the year, and as you can see, a lot of them go for under $500, not just under $1,000. They go for under $500. There are some great buys out there if you're paying attention and you learn as much as you can. I've said this many, many times. The more you know, the less money you need to spend. And that doesn't say you shouldn't buy from dealers. You absolutely should, especially if you're a collector, because a dealer sees more stuff in a month than you'll see in 3 years. They see things all the time. and they're always looking, and they usually will be able to fill in a lot of blanks about the history and background of an example. If you've looked at any of the better English dealers, or the Chait galleries, or you go to Marchand's, or any number of Eskenazi, all of them, you see some very good write-ups on their sites when they're offering things, and that's why you should use a dealer, because you'll learn a lot from them. The good dealers will teach you a great deal, and you're going to pay a little bit of a premium for all that knowledge, but it is worth it. And the simple fact of the matter is that most of the great collections that you'll see, the ones that come up for auction, for example, most of the great collections that come on the market, the bulk of the collections are built by buying from dealers. That's a simple reality. Very few great collections have been built from buying from auctions only. Sometimes you'll see things in auctions, and they'll have provenance to great dealers, because it may have been a dealer or two back or so when it was last sold, but it may have been bought at Spinks and is now being offered at Sotheby's or Christie's or Bonham's or anywhere, who knows where. But the vast majority of great collections were built by earnest, honest, serious collectors, by working with top dealers. Top dealers charge for their services, and they should. But what you get in the long run is a collection with wonderful provenance, and we all know how much that matters when you do go to resell someday, or when your estate is selling you things when you kick the bucket. It's just that simple. You want to work with good dealers, get to know them, and use their knowledge, absorb it, and you'll have a much more enjoyable. It isn't just about the money. In other words, you'll have a much more interesting and enjoyable collection if you learn more about the more you learn about the background of the pieces you collect. All right. There's too much focus on the money. Focus on the objects and their history and what's interesting about them. All righty. Now, that's it for the week. Now, I hope you all are ready for the holidays, and we'll be here. We've got a tenderloin that's here, and some of the kids are coming. My daughter will not be. She's working. She's a nurse at a big hospital. She runs the emergency room at a big hospital, and she won't be available for the holiday. But some of my kids will be here, and then we're going up to North Conway, I hope, for a few days, and we'll be doing videos from up there and checking in. And I guess some of the snow up there has melted. I guess it's been a little bit warm for the last couple of days, so it looks like the ice is off our porch, which is good. And according to the we have cameras on the property that we can observe from here, so it appears that the snow and ice is off, and but we'll be going up there, and we'll have some people here for Christmas, rather, and so forth. And that's it. And I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas, and thank you all very much for watching this year. It's been a lot of fun, and we'll be back next week with the video after Christmas. But I want to say Merry Christmas to everybody, and thank you for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And those of you that are Patreon subscribers, if you haven't seen it this week, we put over a couple of videos over there this week, and some other things that were posted. So there we go, heading into the new year, and we'll be doing more next week. All right, that's it. Thanks a lot. Have a great Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye-bye.